drown in the empty pool of life. My soul is flooded with anger and strife. Dry eyes full of tears, happiness is only a facade. Accepting there's only agony and despair is now gone. Echoes and prayers have no place to land, so my dreams turn silent and slip from my hands. So as you wake me from my nightmarish dreams, listen loudly my silent screams. Echoes and prayers have no place to land, so my dreams turn silent and slip from my hands. So as you wake me from my nightmarish dreams, listen loudly my silent screams. In my mind, a world of confusion, hoping and wishing you will trust my delusion. Cold and heavy, I throw at your feet my broken heart with barely a beat. With barely a beat. With barely a beat. In my mind, a world of confusion, hoping and wishing it was just my delusion. Cold and heavy, I throw at your feet my broken heart with barely a beat.
Hey y'all, Warning Label Nina, Warning Label Discussions. The last video I put out was about the 8th Amendment, and Tanka had the question of what would be the point of view from the other side. And so when I made my next video, I made sure that I answered the question. So now, of course, Tanka has another one, and it's the balance of how do you balance it. Now, we've had two conversations, so it could either be where's the balance in the divide on the Kohberger case, or we were discussing pretty much psychopaths being like machines, that they can't feel love, they can't feel emotions, and so they're just like robots. And he made Tanka made like one of the best comments, because it's let's see, I think it was you can't know love until you felt love, you know. And so I'm pretty sure the balance question is going to be regarding the Kohberger case, because we all know that you have the pro-burgers, the guilters, and that it has caused the Great Divide because everybody wants to fight and not get along, and you know, the pro-burgers are right, the guilters are right, and nobody's wrong. And I don't know, I guess at the end maybe one of us or some of us gets a trophy. I don't know. I mean, I think we should all get a participation trophy at least, you know. So I mean, I don't understand what the big fight is about. So obviously there's something to it, maybe a cruise or Hawaii, or you know, I mean, if he's found guilty, that means that if I win and he's found guilty, then I get to go to Hawaii while he goes to prison. That sounds fair. And then let's see, if Unfiltered Lucky wins because he's found innocent, then Lucky gets to go to Hawaii and take Kohberger with him, and they can be in the same motel together. Yeah, okay. So everybody wins. No. In all seriousness, how do we get a balance with the Idaho 4 Kohberger case? And I'm going to tell you one word: adulting. Because there's not any adulting going on. Nothing but a bunch of romper room, elementary school kids running around blocking this one, blocking that one, yelling at this one, yelling at that one. I've got it right, you've got it wrong. Don't touch me, don't touch me. I'm not touching you, I'm not touching you. So to start, we have to start adulting. Then we have to change the way that we interact with one another. And what I mean by that was, I was in a live last night, I was just in the comments, and it was Swamp Rose, Robert, and A.R. Hayes. So, of course, we know that how all of them feel about the case, and I know how the chat feels about the case. But those are my friends. They are part of my life, you know, so I'm going to go in and I'm going to support them, even with a difference of opinion or a difference of narrative or whatever, you know, because at the end of the day, that case is going to go to trial, and it's going to end up with a verdict, and it will be over. Why would I want to isolate my friends and break up friendships for something temporary? I mean, I don't understand that. So maybe while we're adulting, we could be inclusive, we could be respectful, we could be open-minded, and, you know, just have some kind of unity. And so I think that may be the beginning of a balance, because right now there is no balance. Right now there's no sanity over there. I mean, you know, if you're a guilter, then all the little guilters stay in a little niche, and if you're a pro burger, all the little pro burgers stay in a little niche. And I've just never been one to sit in a little group where I belonged. No, I want to be with everybody. You know, I don't want to just have one way of thinking. I want everybody thinking. So, Tanka, I think that is going to be your answer, and I think it's going to start with adulting. And adulting includes inclusiveness, acceptance, open-mindedness, but most of all, respect. So, that was number one on this video. And number two, I am going to discuss the day my son died. And I'm doing it for a reason. I'm not doing it just to be doing it. But you know what? If I was just doing it to be doing it, it's okay. I mean, it's my son. If I want to talk about my son, I shouldn't be judged for that. So, yeah, we're going to talk about my son. Actually, it's more talking about what losing David did to me. And, you know, I heard a creator the other day say, you know, well, I'm sorry for the families. I know they lost somebody close to them. Close to them? Close to them. No, it wasn't someone close to them. Someone close to you is a friend, an aunt, a cousin, something like that. That's somebody close to you. You know, somebody you run around with. Losing your child, that takes part of you. That loses half of you. You lose half your soul. You lose half your mind. You lose half your body. You lose half your heart. And the day that David's heart stopped beating, I wasn't there. He had gone through the heart catheterization. There wasn't any blockage. And we knew that he didn't have any right side function. And we knew his left side was only 15-16%. So, but it never registered in my head that my son was going to take his last breath one day soon, because he was hooked up to just like the little square heart monitors. He wasn't on any kind of breathing machine. He wasn't on any kind of drips, or, you know, he wasn't hooked to a bunch of stuff. We actually sat in the bed and had conversations, and, you know, we talked. And David lived 11,956 days. And the day that that his heartbeat stopped, when I got there, they had cleaned him up, and so he was laying there, and so I went in and I held him and rubbed his head, and talked to him. When he would have a migraine growing up, he would lay his head in my lap, and I'd rub his head to help his migraine go away. So I rubbed his head. But what I want you to understand is one of the things that haunted me at night was wondering, because the day that it happened, it says that David got agitated and he threw his phone, and that's pretty much what triggered his heart stopping. And so every night, every time I'd close my eyes, I'd think about David's heart going, and him knowing it, and him being scared, and him crying for his mama, and wanting his mama to help him. And that was every day, every night. Anytime I closed my eyes, that's all I could see, because they tried to revive him. I mean, they did chest compressions and everything for over an hour. And so I always wondered, was he scared? Did he know? Did it hurt? Did he cry for me? And luckily for me, I went through his file, and it says that when he threw his phone, that it went into like, I think the word's bradycardia. And from what I understand with bradycardia, you pass out. So I finally learned that his heart stopped while he was passed out. And that was such a blessing for me, because it answered those questions that I'd had. And because David died of IV meth use, and I had been a meth user for 16 years, even though I was clean 7 years when he died, that guilt, that regret took over my life. And it was like, I had to make it up to him. I had to make it right. I had to make it right. I had to do something. I had to do something. To where I forgot that I had another child, a living child, my daughter. And she was in pain. She was hurting, and I wasn't being there for her because I was too wrapped up in trying to ease my guilt and ease my regret. And I finally realized that the way I do that is I tell David's story, and I give David's death purpose. And so for 5 years, that's what I've been doing. The guilt and the regret will always be there. But now I take something so dark, and I realize that David's death will touch more people than his life ever would. So I'm trying to get you to understand what guilt and regret can do to a person. Everybody talks about Steve G, how callous, how rude, how alpha, how he's always doing interviews. He's always, So I thought about it, and I thought, everybody knows that a daddy's job is to protect that little girl. A daddy's job is to rescue that little girl. A daddy's job is to shield that little girl. And I sit there and I wondered, if I wondered about David, did he wonder about Kaylee? Did he wonder if Kaylee screamed for her daddy? Did he wonder, did Kaylee cry for her daddy? Was she scared? What was she feeling? Did she, how long did she feel it? And I realized that maybe Steve was trying to take away some of his guilt, some of his demons, some of his regret. And the worst kind of guilt there is guilt that doesn't belong to you. Guilt that you take on yourself. Steve didn't do anything. Steve did nothing to those girls, to Ethan. But he took that guilt on because he wasn't there to save his little girl. So maybe let's give him a little bit of grace. Just a little. Yeah. Ben Mogan. Have you ever watched his interviews when he talks about Maddie? It's like Maddie was his world. And you can tell that when he talks about Maddie, it's like, I did something right. I got something right in my life. Look at her. She's perfect. And I'm sure he has the same regrets, the same guilt. His eyes just glisten when he talks about Maddie. Jeffrey being the same way. He was at WSU for Parents Weekend. So he was only 20 minutes away. And when he got off the phone with Xana, he was really worried about her, and he was going to go over there. And Jasmine was like, no, you've had too much to drink, and just talked him out of going. And I am not at all blaming her for anything. There is no way that anybody could have known anything. And so he didn't go. So, regret, guilt. So here's the ones I want to talk to you about. Dylan and Bethany. In my opinion, Dylan and Bethany are completely innocent. In my opinion, they did not die that night. But really, was there any survivors? Did they survive? Do you survive that? You know, that's the day their life ended as they know it. You know, their life will never be the same. And the passing out and the hyperventilating at noon, that let me know that that's when they realized, when they really knew what had happened to their friends. And now you've got to wonder, do they wonder what could have happened if they called 911? Now, I do know that Mabbitt made the statement that each victim received a fatal stab. You know, on top of all the other stabs, he gave each one of them that final stab, and that they were probably gone before he ever got out of the room, except for Xana. You know, because Xana's whimpering. So, in my opinion, he goes upstairs to Kaylee and Maddie, and then as he's coming down the stairs, he hears Xana whimpering, and since she's injured, she can probably only whimper. And that's when he comes through and does the I'm here for you, or I'm here to help you. I'm not even going to try to get the exact words because there's no way. But just that false hope, that false security right before he does ultimately take her life. To me, that's the cruelest thing ever. So, I talked to a trauma surgeon, and he informed me that they could have had beds in that living room set up and ready to go for trauma surgery, and that they could not have saved any of them. And that's without seeing the wounds or anything like that. It's just that he knows what kind of damage a Ka-Bar knife can do. But still, you know that Bethany and Dylan have survivor's guilt. You know that they know how easily they could have been number 5 and number 6. And how, if they had done something, if they had yelled, if they had gone and fought, if they had called 911, the shoulda, woulda, coulda, and you don't should all over yourself, you know, I mean, but that's all they can do is wonder what they could have done to change the outcome. An outcome that they never dreamed was going on. So, when we think about Dylan and Bethany, let's give them some grace. You know, everybody talks about how Dylan, you know, got Kaylee to come and go as her +1. And it's like, she lured her there so she could have her offed, you know. Well, y'all do know that Kaylee and Maddie had pretty much, I don't want to say broken up because they weren't together, but because they were in 2 different sororities and lived in 2 different places, a gap had come between them. And you can look at their social media and it proves everything I'm saying. And they, I mean, it was months that they didn't even comment on social media. So they knew that Kaylee was coming that weekend. So Maddie asked Dylan to ask Kaylee to go as her +1 because that was the first year that same sex could go as your +1, that they, you know, could do that as a date. That way Kaylee could go to the formal with them and not have to sit at home alone. So Dylan met with Kaylee at Kaylee's aunt's, and ask her to go as her +1 so she could go and be with the group. Nothing wrong with that. It was keeping her from sitting alone while they go to a formal dance. So that's how that happened. And I'm glad that I'm not glad they went together, Maddie and Kaylee, but I'm glad that before it happened, that they had that chance to be themselves and to go out and to be that bonded sisters that they were. And I'm so glad that Ethan and Xana got to feel that love. But what happens to Dylan and what happens to Bethany? Think about the things that are said about them. Think about the things that they're accused of. And let's always remember that you're always innocent until proven guilty. So we need to give them the same respect and give them some grace. Because that guilt and regret can lead to suicide, drug addiction, dope to cope, anything like that. And they've been through enough. They don't need more added to them. All this is in my humble opinion. So, anyway, I'm going to put out a video here in a little bit because everybody is putting out their alternative suspect list. So I'm going to put mine out, and it's going to be titled Kohberger, the alternative. So this is Morning Label Nina. I hope that some of this has sunk in. So let's put a balance on the Kohbergers and the Guilters with some respect, some inclusiveness, acceptance, and balance it out. We should all be able to have opinions, and we are all going to be adulting, and maybe we can balance it. So, Morning Label discussions, and I'll see y'all in a couple hours. Thank you.